Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now in the Johnson edition to poem 429, The Moon is Distant from the Sea. Some have argued this is another Sam Boyle's poem, especially because during the time that scholars believe the poem was probably written, Sam Boyle's was absent from Amherst, 1862 roughly. It's another lunar poem, and we're going to hear about the moon and the sea. It's another poem about an absent lover and all of that. Senior gets used to reference whoever the man is that she wishes she could be with, but for whatever reason can't be with. And you'll remember that in poem 250, we were referencing as well Senior and suggesting that probably it was Sam Boyle's. Our assumptions that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments where we commented, for example, on the fact that Emily was very interested in the new science, in the new understandings, and of course gravitation and the tides and all of that would have been something she was very interested in. The relationship between the sea and the moon and the tides. I'm also hopeful that you've worked through our previous 428 poems. We just finished with 428, Taking Up the Fair Ideal. And if you have, then you would be able to place this poem, as we just said, for example, with poem 250. Now, it is another poem about relationships, the moon and the sea, and the flux and instability of relationships, as one scholar has called it. There is an interesting juxtaposition or reversal that happens in this poem. First, Emily will be the moon, and then finally she will identify with the distant sea, and then Senior, whoever it is the sea. But ultimately, his amber hands of moon will be his identification. So watch the reversal. It's fascinating. The moon is distant from the sea, and yet with amber hands she leads him, docile as a boy, along appointed sands. He never misses a degree, obedient to her eye. He comes just so far toward the town, just so far goes away. Oh, Senior, thine the amber hand, and mine the distant sea. Obedient to the least command thine eye impose on me. Now, it's difficult for us, and this is one of the reasons we call our series Chats with Emily, because it's difficult for us to say anything dogmatic about Emily and, for example, something like obedience. To what degree is Emily obedient, or is she recalcitrant much of the time? Is she, is she obsequious, or is she rather somebody that just doesn't follow the obedience rules so regularly? It isn't totally clear, and in poems like this, it might be a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It might not be as serious as of a love poem as one would maybe want to imagine. She'll begin, of course, with the relationship between the moon and the distant sea. And notice the rhythm of this poem, even as I was reading it. It has that nice kind of almost like the waves on the ocean. The moon is distant from the sea. This takes us back to poem 212. You'll maybe recall when we did that little two-line poem, least rivers docile to some sea, my Caspian thee. And of course, docile in 212 also gets used here in this poem. I can't help but think that you'll remember when we did our Wordsworth, the world is too much with us late and soon. You'll remember that she will comment on the idea that this sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours and are gathered now like sleeping flowers, he'll say, for this, for everything, we're out of tune. This idea, the relationship between the moon and the sea and the rocking of the ocean. Notice the moon is distant from the sea, and again, we're in some ways back to the idea that whoever it is that she's into is not with her. We see this regularly already in a number of these poems. And yet with amber hands, it's a beautiful way to talk about the moon, she leads him, the sea, docile as a boy, this will be Senior in a little bit, along appointed sands. It's interesting that it's appointed. To what degree is anything in Emily's life appointed? He never misses a degree, obedient to her eye. You'll maybe remember when we hit poem 366 that she commented on obeying him, maybe it is Sam Boyle's, weariest commandments was sweeter than any gain. Go back and look at that one. He never misses a degree obedient to our eye. We'll come to obedient again in a second. He comes just so far, and I think that's the key, maybe a little phrase of this poem, toward the town, just so far goes away, obviously, the waves themselves. Oh, Senior, you'll remember from 250 that we played this game of Senior, right? I shall keep singing, birds will pass me on their way to yellower climes, each with a robin's expectation, I with my red breast and my rhymes. Late when I take my place in summer, but I shall bring a fuller tune. Vespers are sweeter than Martin's, Senior, morning only the seed of noon. Here, oh, Senior, thine the amber hand. So again, notice how, we're playing a game. By the way, some scholars have wondered if maybe, and we said this when we did 250, that maybe Emily has in the back of her mind the connection between Beatrice and Benedict. You'll remember that Beatrice will call Benedict Senior in Much Ado, Act 5, Scene 2, line 43. O Senior, thine the amber hand, and mine the distant sea, obedient to the least command thine eye impose on me. Notice the word least command. I'll do whatever you tell me. The difficulty, of course, is that we have this sense that Emily rarely did whatever she was told, and that's what makes us love her all the more in her poetry. At 2A, though, I think the point of a poem like this is that relationships, no doubt, are symbiotic, but they also can be very complicated in terms of who leads who and who obeys who. At 2B, I love the reversal of this poem. I love that the language of the poem has that nice rocking motion. At 3A, well, we mentioned poems 212, 240, 250, and 366, and of course our referencing possibly to Much Ado About Nothing. At 3B, and obviously we cannot help but think about the Promethean myth, and to what degree is Emily Promethean? I think standing behind many of these subservient, obsequious-like poems, I'll do anything you say, stands the Promethean Emily, which I'm convinced is probably more directly pro-Emily than anything this obedient type of poem suggests. And at level 3B, to identify and own a poem like this, who is the moon or the sea in your life, and to what degree does a poem like this make you smile? Thank you.